All right, good
Yeah.
stuff. Let's move on to the Rose Bowl because, Nick, we talk about this all the time as well. We lament that college football season is the shortest of all the major sports seasons. It seems like it starts, and here we are 12 to 14 weeks later, and we're looking at bowl games and counting them down, and it's all going to be over in about 10 days.
Uh,
And it's except for that one game, it's going to be over in about 3 or 4 days. But if there's one team, Nick, out there, I think you would agree with me that it would be so intriguing to play the entire season over starting tomorrow. How would USC do if we started the season tomorrow and we get to play all these games? That would be the team that I would want to see play the schedule again. This USC team has obviously matured. A lot of it is pinned to the quarterback situation and Max Brown being replaced by Sam Darnold. But just talk about the USC development overall and the difference September to December.
I don't want to say two completely different teams, but they're kind of two completely, at least in terms of results, wildly different end of November than it was beginning of December for USC. First week of the season, they came out to Jerry World in Dallas and played Alabama. And I mean, it was the first quarter, they hung in there. And then after that, it looked like they weren't even playing the same sport. Alabama just pushed them around, imposed their will. And, it felt like it was a Dory Jackson versus the entire University of Alabama. And things didn't get a whole lot better from there. They kind of hung in a little bit better against Stanford. Utah was just a flat-out heartbreaker. They started off 1-3. I should point out each of those games Sam Darnold did play in. He didn't start, but he did play in each of those games. So I think the other thing, I think it took Sam Darnold a couple of games to kind of get warmed up. Maybe get his feet under him, maybe get the rest of the offense used to getting around him. It wasn't entirely like we have this perception that Sam Darnold just sort of showed up at the Utah game and set the world on fire. But he saw action in the previous 3 games as well. I think the other huge thing is Clay Helton kind of learned on the job how to actually make in-game decisions. This is something he didn't have a whole lot of practice with. Not that it would have helped much against Alabama, but a lot of the decisions he made against in the Stanford game and in the Utah game just sort of boggled the mind. Like, you haven't been here before as a head coach, not that long. Maybe you don't know your players that well. And then I will also say this is T. Martin, his first run as an head offensive coordinator. And he kind of struggled in the early going too. He didn't really have an offensive identity. He was kind of just like, did a grab bag. I believe he called it gumbo. And he was like, well, we have this quarterback in now, so let's run this play. And, nobody knew the snap counts. Everybody was jumping off sides. As soon as something would work, like throwing to the tight ends, they'd immediately stop. And so opposing defenses in September were just like, look, the only thing that isn't a train wreck on this offense right now is Juju Smith-Schuster, so just cover him. And they took Juju Smith-Schuster right out of the game, and then everything else was just kind of a mess. Well, they kind of consolidated around one quarterback. T. Martin kind of got his stuff together on offense, and now it's much more cohesive. They have a strategy. They have identity. So you're seeing a ton more people, and it's you're working in tight ends. Now you're seeing the offense saying, okay, you want to double and triple team Juju Smith-Schuster? We have 8 to 9 other guys we're going to throw the ball to, and they do. Which then frees up Juju. So they're actually doing things the right way, the things that make sense, the things that even an armchair coach can figure out this is what you need to do. In September, they did not have that. So I know everyone wants to just put this on Sam Darnold just came in and parted the Red Sea and marched USC to victory. But this coaching staff got a heck of a lot better too. On both sides of the ball. The defensive coordinator wasn't making substitutions. He was running 11 guys playing nickel against run-heavy offenses. Eventually, they all Pendergast kind of sat down, figured it out. So things on both sides of the ball got much better in the coaching department. So I think Darnold has helped, but I think a lot of his success has been a byproduct of everybody just sort of kind of getting their stuff together on the coaching staff and everybody buying in, and they're much more focused now. It would have been better if we would have had this figured out like a month sooner, but good things, once they got things figured out, good things really started happening for USC, and it feels like now the sky is the limit.
Nick, I've got to think that when you're relying on a offensive system with a nickname Gumbo, that could be intriguing, but it's not necessarily effective or efficient, especially if you're at USC. Maybe if you're at LSU, that might work, but at USC, that's a bit strange, bit odd. So we've got some news out of Penn State camp, Nick. We've got a couple players who are not star players, but they definitely have impact roles both offensively and defensively that came out today, will not be suiting up for the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, so Nittany Bowen, the linebacker, he's going to be out. He was suspended for at least the Rose Bowl. And then Saeed Blacknell, the wide receiver, one of their deep threats, he's going to be out. The wide receiver, really, that kind of hurts because Penn State has a tendency to get down in ball games at halftime and need to mount a comeback. And when they do that, they need to go deep. So I'm expecting, Dory Jackson and Imam Marshall to be really tested in the second half when Penn State starts throwing the ball deep. You take away one of their targets, someone else is going to have to step up for Penn State. Otherwise, it might be a little bit difficult for them to throw the football. Now, as far as the linebacker goes, Penn State's had a lot of issues at linebacker, particularly injury-wise. So I'm not sure how much that changes. I think it's probably just it's not good for them schematically, but it feels like it might just be more of the same history repeating. Okay, another one down. Who's up now? But that taking away one of their wide receiver deep threats could really play a big role in the way this game unfolds.
Yeah, Blacknall is a guy that only caught 15 passes this year, but he was very effective getting downfield. So between he and Chris Godwin, Deshaun Hamilton, if you watch the Big Ten championship game, as Nick mentioned, they got down 28-7. And Trace McSorley, I think the theory I have here, Nick, is that he just loves doing that home run swing. So he just chucks it down the field knowing, hey, if we make a big play, I can do the home run swing. But that's kind of Trace McSorley's thing. But Penn State really flying in the face of its black shoes and nondescript helmets and the plain look really hit on big plays. And that was the keynote and the theme and storyline of this offense this year with Trace McSorley at quarterback, was chucking the ball downfield. And really, they won the game because they had wide receivers who were just too big, too physical, too fast, too athletic, and could high point the football over smallish cornerbacks at Wisconsin. Blacknall being one of those guys, 23 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns. And you did mention Manny Bowen on defense, right, Nick? That was the name?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, Bowen's 5th on the team in total tackles this year. He's got 67 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, couple passes defensed. So he makes plays on the field. 5th leading tackler on the team and gets into the backfield. Number 2 on the team in tackles for loss. So that's a pretty big loss.
Yeah, that's now that I know this, that's good. He might be one of the guys that you really want to get Sam Darnold sort of off his spot or rattled, taking him out of the game. He sounds like his stats suggest that he creates havoc in the backfield on defense. And that's something you need if you want to blow up USC's high-powered running game, or if you want to blow up their quarterback who can create plays with his legs but would prefer to throw. You take him out, and maybe you got more options for USC on offense. So that now that I think about it, also a huge concern. They're going to play next man up, but this is they've got 5-6 days to figure it out and make some adjustments to replace those guys. But that could have a huge impact if their second tackle for loss guy just went down. I think they were really counting on havoc in the backfield to disrupt USC's offense for sure.
So, Nick, if you want to play along with me, look at these two teams in regards to what they accomplished this year. I think Vegas is going with what is a perception of a talent gap between the two teams, USC and Penn State. Not a huge gap, of course. Penn State knocked off the likes of Ohio State and Wisconsin late in the season, but USC determined to be a more talented roster taking on Penn State. Obviously, USC's generally kind of at home. Although they're playing in its arch rival stadium, of course, at UCLA, but with playing in their backyard, and they're like a solid 6.5 to 7 point favorite. And based on what Penn State accomplished this year, the results don't speak to USC being the favorite. And again, I think it's a perception of talent, and maybe it's trying to get ahead of the wave of the betting public and determining that people love USC and they're gonna sway in that direction.
Yeah, I think you're right. As I understand Vegas, they make money off of people betting fairly evenly on both sides. So I don't know if they're necessarily trying to get the score right. I think they're trying to get the most lucrative score. Now, having said that, there are challenges inherent to flying across the country to do anything. Now, if you've ever flown across the country, I've made the trip from California to Ohio many a times. It can kind of be problematic, especially if you have to get up the next morning and do anything. So it can throw off a bit of your prep. On top of that, Penn State's cold. I don't know if you know this, but Pennsylvania is cold this time of year. So you take these kids out of the winter, you fly them down to LA where it's gorgeous out, and you take them to Disneyland, and you take them to an all-you-can-eat Lowry's Beef Bowl, and you basically are taking them on vacation, but you also have to prepare to win this football game. And you've got jet lag off a 5.5-hour flight. There's a lot going on. So there are some disadvantages there. Whether or not that actually plays out, I don't know, but in terms of like how productive you are this final week of prep for the actual Rose Bowl game, probably not so much. But then again, USC's doing most of these things too. They're going to Disney and they're eating the beef bowl or whatever it is, and so they're doing a lot of those things. They have to go to Space Mountain too, so there's distractions. You feel like you get over the jet lag in a day or two, but I feel like also, a lot of people are just going to bet on USC because they're USC. But Penn State, I think there also might be a little bit of a layover for the perception of the Big Ten. I know they had 4 teams in the top 10 right now, or maybe it's
4
3
in the top 8. Yeah.
4 in the top 8, so they're half the top 8. So in theory, you're right. Penn State, you would look at this and go, oh, they had a better record and a much harder road to hoe. They should probably win this, but they got to go across the country. And I think a lot of people are just sort of down on the Big Ten in general. Why, I don't know. But
well, what's funny about that, Nick, not to interrupt, but it's Vegas that sets these odds and these point spreads. And theoretically, they consider Ohio State the second best team in the country, because they would select Ohio State to beat anybody except for Alabama. And in fact, they're a 3.5 point favorite against Clemson. I know it was only one game, but Penn State beat that team that we're talking about. Plus, they beat a Wisconsin team that's going to be favored against just about anybody but about 6 or 7 teams in the country.
What can I say? I don't know. Vegas, they're not running out of money anytime soon, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Mark.
Oh, they know what they're doing. There's no question about that.
If I weren't paying attention, or if I just knew what I knew from spending 5 minutes every night watching SportsCenter, I would probably think Penn State would be the better team, just because of a lot of folks think they probably should have been in the top 4 and they should have gone to the playoffs. They beat Ohio State, for crying out loud. But I will have to say this, though. that Penn State win over Ohio State was completely fluky. That was one of the most fluky games I've ever seen, college or otherwise. Look, they got the win. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but come on, if you played that game 100 times, Ohio State would have won 92 of them. But that's the beauty of college football. It's the home of the upsets. And sometimes weird things happen in October that impact January. And that's why we watch, and that's why we love it. Having said that, I totally get why USC is the favorite. They're home. They have the better Rose Bowl record. And I think it's just going to draw more bets. And so that's probably why they're doing it.